Welcome back. We're going to go over your 1099. So if you are a contractor, self-employed contractor, you deliver for Grubhub, Roadie, you do any type of, I can't think of other food deliveries, but if that's your business, we're going to go over how to file your taxes using your 1099. And just to quickly do an overview explanation. So for your 1099 income, we are trying to reduce your income by the allowable expenses so that we have a smaller portion of income that can be used to pay your taxes off of. So that's our goal here in this video. The way that we do that is we fill out a Schedule C form, which is going to determine our net profit or loss for that business type. And then we're going to also fill out a form Schedule SE, a Schedule 1, and a Schedule 2. So what I would do is I would just Google search IRS form Schedule C, IRS form Schedule SE, IRS Schedule Form 1, and IRS Schedule Form 2. We're going to go over those. I know it seems like a lot of forms to do, but they're going to be very quick. And this is good practice so that you can get used to and the hang of doing these going forward. Also, I just want to explain that doing your expenses off of your 1099 income is a separate entity from doing your itemized deductions or taking the standard deduction amount. Those are two separate things. We are not combining those. We're not intermingling those two concepts here. All we're working on is trying to figure out how we can reduce our 1099 income with the allowable expenses, and we do that with filing Schedule C. So let's get started. We're going to have your 1040 form open. I have my first video on my YouTube channel that explains the 1040 form and how to fill that out. So for the first portion here, it's your personal info that you're filling out. I'm going to skip ahead of that because we don't need to worry about that right now. What we are going to concentrate our focus on is the income portion. So line 1A says total amount from your form's W-2. That's your income from your W-2, not your 1099. So if you only have 1099 income and you only got 1099 tax forms, you're going to leave that line 1A blank. If you also have a W-2, put in your W-2 income there, and then we'll work on your 1099 income here in this video. So let's pull up, because right now we're going to figure out what we need to put where. You can see I've got some pre-filled items here. Please ignore those because we're gonna walk through and do this and start from scratch. So for an example, here's my 1099 form from Roadie. I've got box 1 is $6,874.95. That was my compensation for 2024. As you can see, and this probably applies to you, federal income tax was not withheld, nor was state tax withheld. So for my situation, for this income portion of my total income, my gross income for 2024, I am definitely going to want to reduce that income by expenses that I made, that I've used, so that I pay less tax on it. Because right now, as it stands, if I don't do that, I owe a big tax bill because I didn't pay any federal income tax from my 1099 or state tax. So it's going to be beneficial to me to go through these forms and figure out how to reduce my taxable income. I've had it in years past where I did not do this, and this probably applied to you or applies to you now. And please don't worry about the time frame of this, and hopefully this video really helps you, figure out your time constraints and hopefully directs your focus in doing this a little bit more efficiently. But I didn't have time in the past, so I owed a big tax bill, and I don't want that for myself or for any of you going forward. So let's figure this out together right now so that you owe less taxes. All right, so that's the 1099. If you've got multiple 1099s for the same type of business, you're going to combine all of those incomes, just FYI. All right, and I'll go over that in more detail later on. We've got Schedule C. So right now we're going to work on Schedule C, and this is the order that we're going to work on these forms so that you can save these forms in a similar file folder like I've done to keep yourself organized. I've got my 1099 pay stubs I'm keeping in the same file. If you got an iPad, this is where they all are. If you've named a file folder, your 2024 taxes, and then put in that file your 1099 income, because that's going to be separate from if you have a W-2 pay stub. So that'll help keep you organized. All right. So this is my 1099 file folder for my 2024 taxes. I've got my Schedule C. I got my Schedule SE, my Schedule 1, my 1040 form, and I've got my instructions for my Schedule C. And then I will also have my Schedule 2 form, which is there at the top. Looks like this. All right. So right now, first order of business, we're going to start working on our Schedule C. Now, on the first part, name of proprietor, that is going to be your first and last name. If you filed a LLC and you paid a fee with, let's say, the state of California of $75, you paid a fee to file and register your business name in the state of California, and they wrote you back and gave you a letter saying, okay, great, you're approved for your LLC. And you've also filed for an EIN number, which is free with the IRS, and they issued you an EIN number, great. And you've also filed and registered and opened a tax account within the state that you're working in for that business. And you've done all three of those components. And you've also received income to that business name. Let's say it's Cassandra LLC. For 2024, I've received income with checks written out to Cassandra LLC. Then I'm going to put my business name there as name of proprietor. I can't say it. And I'll put my business name there. And then my social security number. But I did not. So my 1099 is in my first and last name, as you can see, and most likely is the same case for you. Recipient's name, Cassandra, and my last name. All right, so let's go back to Schedule C. That's your name, social security number there, and then your principal business or profession. And then it's going to want you to put a code, and it says enter code from instructions. So let's pull up our Schedule C instructions. And what you'll do to find this code for your business is you're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And you're going to find all of these codes. So for myself, because I've only done deliveries with Roadie, and let's say I did some Grubhub deliveries, which would all fall under the same code type, the same category, I can combine those incomes and put them all on a single Schedule C form. Let's say like this does apply to me. I have a mortgage business, as well as I have also done Roadie deliveries and Grubhub deliveries. That mortgage business, if I want to write off expenses to that mortgage business, I have to file a separate Schedule C form. So for this to make sense, it's easy just to remember for each code type that you use, for each type of business that you're operating is going to have a different code, which requires a separate Schedule C. If I had a mini mart, that's going to be a different Schedule C. That's number 1, Schedule C. Mortgage business, that's a second separate Schedule C. Third business is my Grubhub deliveries. That's a separate Schedule C. And that's if I want to write off my expenses to each of those businesses to reduce my income. That's a lot of work, I know. And that's why people use those tax services and tax accountants, especially for 1099. But this video is going to go over your deliveries, and it's very simple. And I wanted to do this video because it is simple to do. It just looks very complicated because of all the forms involved. But most of the information on all of those forms are going to be ignored because we're only doing a delivery side business, a 1099, and all of these extra situations are not going to apply. So please follow along. This is going to help save you in taxes. Hopefully get yourself a refund too if you have a W-2 and you paid federal income tax already. All right. So for the code type, we're going to go down and we're going to find what's going to be best fit for the business that we operated in 2024. And for this situation, it's couriers and messengers. That's all I did. I delivered roadie packages and I did Grubhub. So that's the best fit category for my business. Luckily, that's all I have on that separate business type. So if I also had DoorDash, all three of those incomes, if I've got a DoorDash 1099, I've also got a roadie 1099, and I've got a Grubhub 1099, I can combine all three of those 1099s on the same Schedule C, meaning I can combine all of those incomes, meaning I can combine all of the expenses all into just one form. They don't need to be filed separately because they all fall under the same category. So 492000 is our code type. And we're going to go back to our Schedule C form, and that's where we're going to put 492000. And you're going to put the associated description for that code here on line A. Business name is what I explained on the top portion, name of proprietor. And that's going to be your first and last name. And maybe I got confused myself when explaining that. Business name, if you had an LLC, would be on line C. If no separate business name, leave blank. Here's your employer ID number, and you would put that there if you operated that business under an LLC and you have an EIN and you filed a tax record or a tax account with your state, put that information there. When filing for an LLC, let's say, and you're using that for your 1099 income, you want to report your business name to Grubhub to receive your income, the checks written out to your business name, and you've got an EIN, and that's all you do. It's really not going to make much of a difference of filing an LLC for that business or just using your first and last name for that business. If that's strictly all you're doing and there's nothing unique, there is no benefit to that. So I think there's some confusion around that, and it's really just, I feel like a lot of it's advertising for people to get them to pay the $75 fee or $150 in Oregon to file for a business name when they don't need to. Okay. Of course, do so if you've got a business plan set, you want to work on that, do so. But there's not going to be much of a benefit in just doing Grubhub deliveries for you. So save yourself in filing those fees. Business address. Your business address is going to be your home address. It's going to also be listed, it should be on your 1099 or whoever you report your income with, Grubhub or roadie, or get your income from. It's going to be your personal address. Excuse me. Line F, accounting method. It's going to be cash. For myself, it's going to be cash. I don't run my 1099 Grubhub deliveries on an accrual method. I get paid instantly, and I got paid on my 1099 form. I'm not waiting for any future payments to come in. Accrual is going to be most likely used for a corporation or an actual legitimate business where they do account receivables and they put on their records the income that they're set to get paid for, but they have not received payment for it yet. So that's not us. We're going to use select cash in this instance. So check mark that. And did you materially participate in the operation of this business during 2024? Yes, I did. I drove my car. I made the deliveries. That's what that means. If not, see the instructions, but most likely you did. If you started or acquired this business during 2024, check here. I did not. I didn't start a business either, so that would not apply to me. Again, if you filed an LLC, you started a whole separate courier messenger business. Let's say you do the same type of business, but it's all under your own made-up app platform, and you do it on the side, or you do grocery deliveries, but you don't use a third-party courier service like Grubhub is or roadie is, and you do it yourself, then you would probably want to file an LLC. But that's not the case for me. I use Grubhub and roadie to pay me, which is a third-party situation. So I did not start this business in 2024. It's not my business. I didn't start it. Grubhub did. Did you make any payments in 2024 that would require you to file forms 1099? And that's line I. If I subcontracted, let's say to my younger sister and I said, hey, I'm getting paid $20 for this Grubhub delivery. I'll give you 10 if you go and actually make the delivery, and I'll pay you as a 1099 employee, which I don't know if that's really allowed, but let's just say for shits and giggles it is. And I filed a Form 1099 and I registered that and I paid her under a 1099, then I would select yes. But most likely you did not pay anybody else under a 1099. If you gave your cousin $5 to go make the delivery for you, $5 cash, were you going to tell the IRS that you did that? Like, no. So come on, you didn't. So you're going to select no. If yes, did you or will you file required forms 1089? No, that doesn't apply to me. No. All right, gross receipt or sales. See instructions for line 1 and check the box if this income was reported to you on Form W-2 and the statutory employee box on that form was checked. Statutory employee on Form W-2 is not going to apply to my 1099 income I have. That's a separate situation. You can look at the instructions, but it's not going to apply to me. So my gross receipt or sales, period. That's for my 1099. So I'm going to go back to my 1099 form from Rody. 6874.95 is my income. Let's go back to Schedule C. I round it up to 6875. That's what I'm putting on line 1. Returns and allowances. So line 2, line 3, and line 4 don't apply to me. That's for a separate type of business, a separate type of code where it's possible that would apply, but we're working on couriers and messengers as our business type, and most likely that's not going to apply to you either if you did Grubhub, Uber delivery service. So that's not going to apply. Cost of goods sold on line 4, if I sold product. I didn't sell any product. Grubhub sold product, and I delivered those products, so that doesn't apply to me. Gross profit. Subtract line 4 from line 3. So that's, the same. My gross profit was 6875. I'm just putting that same number there. Other income, including federal and state gasoline or fuel tax credit refund. That's income. That doesn't apply to expenses. That's other income. If I got a gas income from something, you can look at the instructions for that, but that doesn't apply to me. Leave it blank. Gross income, add lines 5 and 6. 6875, that's my gross income received from my 1099. Again, if you've got multiple 1099s under the same type of business, add them all together and put them on line 1, line 5, and line 7. All right. Now here's where we get to the good part, expenses, part 2. Line 8, advertising. I didn't do any advertising for my business. Let's say I had a mortgage business though, and I filed all my proper paperwork and I filed my tax record with the state of California. I'm going to want to start keeping my receipts for advertising because business cards, flyers, website, all of that would fall under advertising. But this is Grubhub delivery, Rody deliveries. I did not do any advertising for that. Grubhub does the advertising. Rody does the advertising for that for their customers. I am the messenger. So that's not going to apply to me. Car and truck expenses, line 9. So let me explain. We're going to go through the instructions here. Schedule C instructions for 2024. We're going to scroll down to line 9. And let's see what line 9 says. You can deduct the actual expenses of operating your car or truck, or you can take the standard mileage rate. The actual expenses of operating your truck or car would mean that you kept all of your receipts for 2024 for your gas, all of your receipts for your mileage expenses. Let's say if the provider didn't provide them to you, and all other related expenses. And you kept all those receipts. You can reduce your income by that amount. I did not do that. Also, I use my car for personal business, so there's no way for me to count how much $50 fill up of my car was used for personal and then for business. So what I did get though from Rody, and I think Grubhub also provides, is my mileage driven for all of the deliveries I made. If they don't provide that, send them an email and ask them for one. If they don't have that, start keeping track of your mileage going forward into 2025 so that you can write that off in 2026. What you can also do is maybe estimate. It's kind of, I kind of don't want to say that, but sometimes you just kind of have to estimate. Do not overestimate though, because the risk of doing that, if you make it so obvious that you overestimate by a lot, an auditor will come, they'll notice, and an auditor will come to you and they'll fine you much more than it's worth to even do that and to lie about it. So don't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the standard mileage rate. In my situation, I know how many miles were driven. Roadie provided a statement of my mileage. So I'm going to take that amount and I'm going to go through the calculation here. So if I'm taking the standard mileage rate, they're going to provide a calculation. So if you see that here, it explains to you, you can take the standard mileage rate only if you own the vehicle and use standard mileage rate for the first year you place a vehicle in service, lease a vehicle and are using the standard mileage rate for the entire lease period. Okay, that applies. You know, I own the vehicle, I'm driving the vehicle, and or I leased it from, let's say I'm driving a fancy BMW or something. I lease it. That would apply. I can take the standard mileage rate. Great. So now I'm taking my standard mileage rate. I know I drove 7,000 miles. You're going to multiply the number of business miles driven. That's what I explained about the gas. You got to know how many business miles, not overall miles. You can't use your dashboard and track how many miles were driven last year, because that's also combining your personal use of the car. Again, an auditor will come and find you and they'll fine you. Don't do that. Multiply the number of business miles driven by 0.67. In my case, I drove 7,000 miles. So I'm going to take my calculator. We're going to go 7,000 miles times 0.67 is 4,690. Another nice thing here that they allow you to do is you can add that amount to your parking fees and tolls. You have to have your receipts. If you don't have your receipts, but you know you paid for them, go through your checking account statement. I know it might be a lot of work, but it's going to help you. If you know that you paid quite a bit, it always is going to help you to reduce that income by those amounts. If you've got like $300 in parking fees and tolls that you paid, not that you have a bill for, but that you've actually paid, and you've got a receipt of that from your checking account statement or an actual receipt, add that to this portion. So for me, I didn't pay for parking. I don't have any parking fees or tolls. So I have my 7,000 miles driven multiplied by 0.67, which is 4,690. Enter the total on line 9. Tells you right there. All right, so we're going to go back. We're going to go back to our Schedule C, and we're going to put that on line 9, 4,690. Great. All of these other expenses, I'm going to safely assume that they're not going to apply to you either if you're in my same boat of just doing deliveries. If you're just in the Roadie Delivery Club and the Grubhub and the Food Delivery Club, those aren't going to apply to you. I could go over them, but it would take up a lot of time in this video. So let's just skip over that. If you feel like line 13, depreciation in section 179 expense deduction applies, go through the instructions and read into it. But most likely it does not. So we're going to skip over all of these. Office expense, line 18, see instructions. It'll tell you what you can write off. It's possible maybe you use a mileage calculator that you pay for, an app or something on your phone. You can maybe write that off because you're using it for the business, to track your mileage, or some kind of gas app maybe that you pay for. I don't know what that would even be, but you can write that off as well because that would be part of your office expense, your business for running this business type. All right, rent or lease would not be your rent or lease of the vehicle. You cannot write that off. Rent or lease would mean for an office. You don't need an office for Grubhub deliveries or food deliveries. All right. Repairs and maintenance, line 21. Let's go back to our instructions. Line 21. Excuse me. Deduct the cost of incidental repairs and maintenance that do not add to the property's value, and do not deduct amounts spent to restore or replace property. So for me, I am going to deduct the cost of my tires. I had to pay for new tires, which is about $300. and a oil change of $120. If you paid for more than that for your car, for using it for deliveries, because deliveries, they take up a lot of mileage. They do eat up on your car, more so than just the personal use of your car. Write those off. Get those expenses. Make sure you have the receipts and save them in your file folder for your 2024 taxes. Because in case, just because if you do this perfectly and nothing looks out of the ordinary and you get whatever back from the IRS saying your taxes are good, it doesn't mean that an auditor down the line in the next 3 years or so would come back. They can always come back and look at them and come back to you and ask for receipts. So don't think that that's not possible. It is. That's why they say keep your records for 3 years for your taxes, because you need to keep your receipts so you don't get in trouble. All right, so for me, $300 in tires, $120 for an oil change. I'm going to put that on line 21 on my Schedule C form for repairs and maintenance. $420, I have receipts of that. For my tires, I did not save the receipt. I don't know why, but I do have that on my checking account statement that I went through. So I saved a screenshot of that and put it in my file folder for my taxes. All of the other line items are not going to apply to me and most likely will not apply to you. You, of course, can go through the instructions and read through them if you've got the time and see if they apply to you, but most likely not. I'm just trying to save you as much time here as possible because I know that people are busy. So we're going to skip over that. Schedule C. Let's go back to Schedule C. So now we're done with my expenses. I've only got 2 line items here for expenses. Now it's going to say that was this section here, Part 2, expenses. That's all the expenses that apply for my business here, for this type of business. Line 28, they want you to just add up all of your expenses. Total expenses is $5,110. So I added $4,690 plus my $420 in my tires and oil change. Total is $5,110. Now it's saying tentative profit or loss. Subtract line 28 from line 7. So I'm going to take my income, my gross income from this business, from this 1099, my gross income from the 1099 deliveries, and I'm going to subtract my expenses from that income, and that gives me net profit of $1,765. Now, of course, I've got multiple 1099s because this car and truck expenses, that's way too high for this small amount of income. So this income is just an example. I mean, this could apply to you. I don't know, but you're not getting paid enough if you're driving that many miles and only getting that much income. So obviously, this is probably around $15,000, $20,000 of income. And these are my standard mileage rate, my miles driven. But we're just using this as an example right now. So for right now, I've got a net profit of $1,765. If that were true, I would not continue to do this business anymore because it's not worth it to me. Maybe it is, I don't know, but it depends on your situation. All right, so $1,765, that's all we need to worry about. What's our net profit? What's our total expenses? Let's subtract the total expenses from our gross income of our 1099 to determine what our net actual profit is from that business. All right, expenses, line 30. Expenses for business use of your home. You do not use a home office for this business because you're out in your car delivering. So that's not going to apply to you either. And I've mentioned you can't write off your payment for your car because you're also using that for personal. So that's not going to apply either. Line 31, net profit or loss. Subtract line 30 from line 29. Line 30 is blank. So I did not use my home office for making deliveries. So that's blank. So subtracting 0 from 1765 still leaves me with 1765 for line 31. Now it tells you and it gives you an explanation. If a profit, line 31, if a profit, enter on both Schedule 1, line 3, and on Schedule SE, line 2. So that's what we're going to work on next. We now know our net profit here. We can scroll down to the remainder of Schedule C before we move on. And I'm just going to go over and explain Part 3, cost of goods sold, is not applying to my business type because I did not sell any product. Grubhub sold the product. I did not. I was a messenger and courier. So this can be left blank. Information of your vehicle, part 4, you do need to fill out. So you need to put in your information about your vehicle. It also says that you may need to file Form 4562 for this business. Most likely you do not, because I don't, because this is a side business, 1099. We don't need to fill out an extra form. We just need to fill out our actual miles driven. For me was 7,000. And we determined what my deduction for the standard mileage rate for IRS, which was that other number on the expense portion up here of $46.90. But my actual miles driven was 7,000. So I'm going to put the actual miles driven. Was your vehicle available for personal use during off-duty hours? Yes, it was. So I'm going to check mark that yes, it was used. If this works, I don't know. Maybe not. But check mark that yes. Do you or your spouse have another vehicle available for personal use? No, I just have one car. I'm not rich like that. So no. Do you have evidence to support your deduction? Yes, I do. Rody provided me the mileage that I drove. So yes, I have a piece of a document, a piece of paper that says these are the miles driven for Rody, and it was issued by Rody. If yes, is evidence written? Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because like I just said, they provided me that mileage paperwork. All right, other expenses, not going to apply to me, most likely not going to apply to you. And then it wants you to add them all up here on line 48. I'm going to leave that blank because it doesn't apply to me. So we're done here with Schedule C. And now we're going to take some of this information and we're going to move on to the next form, which is Schedule 1. So let's do that now. If you need to take a break, pause this video and come back. But let's open Schedule 1. Now, the same situation here. For some reason, some of these forms word their top portion for your name differently. And I don't know why, but just always remember for each form, on the very top, is going to be your first and last name and your social security number. So name, your first and last name, social security number. Always fill that out. For 2024, enter the amount reported to you on Forms 1099K. I'm going to leave that blank. That doesn't apply to me. That applies to some type of other business investment type, and it's not applying to a Grubhub courier delivery service. So leave that blank. Part 1, additional income, taxable refunds, no. Alimony, I didn't receive any alimony. If you did, put that in there. Date of original divorce, I did get divorced, but I don't receive any alimony, so I got screwed there. I don't know why, but I'm going to leave that blank. Business income or loss, attached Schedule C. My business income or loss, so I had a net profit from Schedule C, and it says attached Schedule C. So just to verify, we're taking our net profit made, which is on line 29, because we took our income minus our total expenses, leaving us $1,765 as our net profit, and putting that on Schedule 1, line 3. And just to reiterate here, it also says where to put that on line 31. If a profit, enter on both Schedule 1, line 3, right there. Okay. All right, so we got our net business income from our Schedule C on line 3, $1,765. All of these are additional incomes. If you had a gambling income, if you made some money at a casino, you could put that there. All of these are just other incomes. I did not have any other incomes. Cryptocurrency income that you took out of your Robinhood brokerage, and you want to report that as income, put that there. Other income, you would have to go through the instructions and look at what qualifies as other income. You would put that there. None of that qualifies for me. I only have 1099, Grubhub, and Rody income, so I'm putting all of that here, and that's all the other income I have separate from my W-2. So I'm just going to combine lines 1 through 7 and 9, which is going through all of these incomes here and combining all of your other incomes based on all of these options, and we're going to add them all together. For me, my total income is just my net income from Grubhub and Rody, which is $1,765. So $1,765 is going to remain the same on line 10. adjustments to income. So these are your adjustments to income, any expenses paid. You can go through this list and see if it applies to you. Most likely it doesn't. I'm trying to save you time. You can also go through the instructions and see if it applies to you. For me, it doesn't. Most likely it doesn't for you either. So I'm going to skip over all of this and we're going to just stick to the basics. So please ignore line 15. Let me go ahead and delete that because we're not there yet. And line 26, we're not there yet. So this is where we're at with Schedule C. All right. Now we need to figure out, we're going to go back to schedule, we're on Schedule 1. We're going to go back to Schedule C, and we're going to look at our net profit line item, which is 31, because it tells you, it gives you instructions, a hint of where to put all of this and what forms are needed. So we've got Schedule 1 started, and it says if a profit, enter on both Schedule 1, line 3, and on Schedule SE, line 2. So let's open Schedule SE. That's here. Again, first and last name at the top, social security number. All right. The first part, Part A, is not going to apply to me. If you're a minister, if you got a farm, if you receive social security, retirement, and disability benefits, fill that portion out. If that doesn't apply to you, like it doesn't apply to me, I'm leaving it blank. All right. Skip to line 2 if you use a non-farm optional method in Part 2. See instructions. I have no idea, but we're working on this. We don't have a farm. So net profit or loss from Schedule C, line 31. I'm putting 1765. Same situation. Schedule K1 doesn't apply to you. If it does, read the instructions. Go through that. Combined lines 1A, 1B, and 2. I don't have anything in 1A or 1B, so I'm sticking with the same number, which is 1765 for line 3. 4A. All right, so let me delete this and we'll go through this together. If line 3 is more than 0, 1765 is more than 0, multiply line 3 by 92.35, which is 0.9235 on your calculator. All right, so we're going to do that now. 1765 times 0.9235 is 1629.97. I'm going to round up to 1630. Done. All right. Otherwise, enter amount from line 3. If line 4A is less than 400, see instructions. All right. So we got 1630. Now combine lines 4A and 4B. So the line 4B I'm ignoring. It doesn't apply to me. I'm combining lines 4A and 4B on 4C. Same number, 1630. Then it tells you on line 4C, if less than $400, stop. So that means that if you have less than $400 on 4C, you don't owe self-employment tax. If it's more than $400, like for me, I owe self-employment tax. That means self-employment tax was not taken out of my 1099, and it probably wasn't for you either, which it never is, because right now we're doing a self-employment income for our 1099, and we're doing that so that we can reduce our income by expenses. So we're putting 1630. I'm going to owe self-employment tax. The next portion, we're going to figure out how much self-employment tax is owed. I am not a church employee. I'm leaving that blank. I'm leaving 5A and 5B blank. Add lines 4C and 5B on line 6. So we're putting that line 6, 1630 is the same amount. All right, and then it tells you the maximum amount of combined wage and self-employment earnings subject to Social Security tax is $168,600. Okay, and that means that if you made that much money, if you made more than that, then you have to do a separate calculation, I believe. I'm not too familiar, but I don't need to worry about that now. Okay. This is total Social Security wages and tips from your W-2. We don't have a W-2. We're working on a 1099. We can skip over that portion. We can skip over 8A, 8B, 8C, and 8D. It doesn't apply because we have a 1099. Subtract line 8D from line 7. That's 0. Okay. Enter 0 and on line 10 and go to line 11. Okay. I'm sorry, here we are. 0 for 8D. Okay, line 9. Subtract line 8D from line 7. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to leave that blank. Okay. Because that does not, we don't have a W-2. We don't need to worry about that. So just go ahead and leave that blank. That's kind of confusing. All right. Multiply the smaller of line 6 or line 9. So we've got line 6, 1630, or the smaller of line 9. Line 9 does not apply here. That's working off all of this. And your W-2, which we don't have, that's not applying to this business type here. All right. So we're going to take line 6, 1630. I'm going to get my calculator. Line 6, 1,630. And it's saying to multiply by 12.4% or 0.124 on your calculator times 0.124 is 202.12. So I'm going to round down and put 202. Then line 11, it says multiply line 6, the same number, by 2.9%. So I'm taking line 6, 1,630, times 2.9, which is 0.029 on your calculator. And that's 47.27, rounding down to 47. Now it's asking 12, line 12, add lines 10 and 11, enter here, and on schedule 2, line 4. So 249. I'm going to just tell you right now, 249 is your self-employment tax that is owed and due to the IRS for reporting this income and reducing your expenses. You're reducing your income by the expenses allowed. So we're done with this schedule SE form. The rest is for farm optional, non-farm optional method. It's not going to apply to you. We're just trying to figure out what our self-employment tax is. And that's 249. We are done with schedule SE. So now let's move on to schedule 2. And it says to report that, let's go back to schedule SE. Schedule 2, line 4. So let's go to schedule 2. And we're putting, I'm sorry, what was the number? It was 249. 249. Line 12 from schedule SE is going on schedule 2, line 4 of 249. Done. All right. And then it says attach schedule SE. These options up here at the top, part 1, not applying to you. You can leave those blank. Put your first and last name at the top, your social security number, and let's go through here. If other taxes that you need to pay, let's say you had social security income and you didn't pay taxes on those, you're going to have to figure out what that tax rate is supposed to be. You're going to have to look at the instructions, and it looks like filing another form. Doesn't apply to me. None of these other tax situations would apply to me. I'm just worried about the self-employment tax to get my Schedule C filed with the IRS so I can reduce that 1099 income by the most expenses possible. That's all we're trying to do here. And I have to pay a penalty for doing that, which is $249, which is going to be worth it to me in the long run because it's going to save me a lot more money. All right. Other additional taxes, again, no. Add lines 4, 7 through 16, see line 21. These are your total other taxes. So I'm going to go back. Line 4, it starts with 249. It's going to be the same on line 21. All of that for 2 line items for another form. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? All right, Schedule 2 is done. We've got Schedule SE and Schedule 2 for figuring out and reporting our self-employment taxes. That's what we were doing here. For filling out a handful of line items. That's it. 2 forms. Lots of paperwork. Great. 241. Now it says on line 21, these are your total other taxes. And it tells you, which is nice, enter here and on form 1040, line 23. So hopefully you got your 1040 saved in this folder. Save a copy. And we're going to go to line 23. And it says taxes and credits. And we're just going to plug that in right now. If you don't have your 1040 completed all the way, don't worry about that. We're working on this line, portion by portion. Make sure you get this filled out so you don't have to worry about it later. So schedule 2, 249 or 241. I'm sorry, it's supposed to be 249. 249 is our self-employment taxes, which is categorized as other taxes on form 1040, line 23. 249. Other taxes that I owe. That's the taxes and credits portion, which means these are the taxes that I would owe after determining what my taxable income is. And I went over that in the first video for filing your 1040 form. This is going over your 1099 to figure out if we can reduce your income by as many expenses as possible. And these are the forms required to fill out and to do that. All right, let's go to schedule 1, making sure that we've got everything completed here. So we've got our additional income, $17.65. And so we want to make sure we pay attention that we're filling out all the lines needed for the 1040. So let's go. Schedule 1, it says on line 10, combine all of your total income. This is your additional income. Enter here and on form 1040. Enter here and on form 1040, line 8. So let's go back to our 1040. Let's make sure line 8 is filled out. We've got additional income from schedule 1, line 10. $17.65. There's my additional income. I'm deleting this line 10 portion because sorry about that. Ignore that. Okay. This is my additional income. This is my total income on line 9. All right. And then we've got, let's go back to our schedule 1. And let's make sure that we have everything here. Adjustments to income. I don't have any other adjustments to income. Add lines 11 through 23. I don't have any. Those don't apply to me. So that would be 0. You can fill in 0 or just leave it blank. But I'm really just worried about reporting this additional income. So what the 1040 form is saying is it's asking for all of your income here in this portion. You've got your W-2 income. Great, that's simple. You put that on line 1A. But you also have 1099 income. What is that categorized as? Because it's not a W-2 income, and it's not household employee wages not reported. It's not tip income. It's none of these income options here. 1099, if you file a Schedule C and you do the Schedule SE and the Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, would qualify as additional income now because we've reduced total expenses allowable from that income, and now it says additional income line item on line 8 of your 1040. It does not go up here. Your gross income does not, from your 1099, does not go up here in these top portions because we put our gross income on our Schedule C already from our 1099. These were my gross receipts or sales. Just so that you can keep track and the IRS keeps track of what you're doing here. Hopefully that helps you. All right, so we've got our 1040 additional income. We can say, I had a W-2 as well, $30,000. And that would be pretty straightforward to figure out what my federal income tax and state tax withheld. That's very basic. Again, I went over that in my first video on my channel. 1099 is additional income reported. So if I've got W-2 of $300,000 and I want to add in my additional income and I figured out what that net profit was, net income is, I'm adding that to my $300,000 portion. And then I'm doing subtract line 10 from line 9. I don't have any adjustments to my income on line 10. So my adjusted gross income would be my total income because I added, I'm sorry, hopefully not confusing you. I added in my W-2 income, so my total income here on line 9 would be the $301,765 on line 9. But if you just got 1099, this is it. Hopefully that did not confuse you. It sounded really confusing, but I'm just giving an example here if you had a W-2 and a 1099. All right. Now, we're done with doing the Schedule C. That was it. You got your Schedule C filled out. You're going to save that. You're going to make copies to send to the IRS and your state tax authority. You got your Schedule SE to figure out what your self-employment tax, and we put that on 1040, waiting for us when we figure out what our taxes and credits are. So we've got our self-employment tax. We got our Schedule 1, which was to report what our additional income was after our expenses. You have to put that on a separate schedule form, which is Schedule 1. And we're saying we're putting that on line 1040, line 8. It's my additional income, any adjustments to my income if applicable. And then we've got our Schedule 2. Our Schedule 2 is saying this is what I'm reporting as my self-employment tax. And here, look, I'm putting it on my 1040 form as well on line 23. That's it. All right. The reason why so much information and line items on these forms is because these forms are not just used for your 1099 Grubhub deliveries. These forms are used for all types of self-employment businesses and incomes. If you remember going through those instructions and looking at all the codes, different codes for your businesses, there's a shit ton. So that's why we have all of these line items on each of these forms, because they're not going to issue a new type of form for each type of code, because could you imagine? That's what? Thousands of forms. If you've got multiple forms for each type of business, that's a lot for them to print and reproduce and come up with and update every single year. So that's why they just use one standard form for these situations. So if you're confused by, well, aren't I supposed to fill out, all of part 1 and all of these lines? No, that would only apply if you have a different type of business. We're only sticking with this one type of business. So don't worry about that. Like I mentioned in my first video, you can put a line item through each line if it doesn't apply to you, however you want to do it. But I know it seems like a lot, and that's why I explained it seems like a lot of forms to fill out and confusing, but it's not if you just stick to what's pertaining to you and your business type. And that's all we're doing here. So we finished with figuring out what our expenses are to our business by filing and filling out 4 separate forms to do so. But doing that does not take much time because you're not filling out every single line item on all of those forms, just a few. That's it. Just make sure you follow along. Save this video. Go back to this video. If you are confused by anything, please ask a question in the comments. I hope that if I can't answer, other people watching the video can help answer. So please just be a little more proactive and communicate and ask questions. That's all you need to do. Or look at the instructions, and if you're confused, ask. I'm here to help. All right, so we're done Schedule C, and now we can go back to our 1040. And this is where you're going to figure out, okay, am I using standard deduction or itemized deductions? In this scenario, let's say you only have a 1099, okay? And you went through the process of determining what all your expenses are to that business or businesses, and you have a standard deduction allowed to you as a single person of $14,600, and your income is at $14,000. Your net income, your additional income of the 1099 is at or less than $14,600. Use the standard deduction. Don't go through the extra paperwork of going through and filling out another form, a Schedule A, of itemizing your deductions. Reducing 0 to a negative number is not beneficial to you in filing your taxes with the IRS. It could be in your state taxes for filing your state taxes. I'm not familiar with what state you're in and what's required for that, but it's not going to benefit you in filing your IRS federal taxes. So I'll just repeat that. If your income, you figured out your 1099 income, and let's say you also had W-2 income combined, and let's say that's at now $14,600 or less, use the standard deduction. If you have itemized deductions and you know it's more than $14,600 and you have more income, let's say you've got $50,000 of total income of W-2 and 1099, and you've got more than $14,600 of itemized deductions, you can use then do Schedule A. That's going to help you. But remember that Schedule A for itemized deductions, only certain things are allowed to itemize your deductions. So if you've got a lot of medical expenses, a lot of dental bills, but that you've paid, then do that because that's going to benefit you. But if not, then use a standard deduction. It's going to save you paperwork. It's going to save you time. For me, I'm going to use a standard deduction, which is $14,600. So I'm going to put that there on line 12, $14,600. And now I'm going to be at a negative or at 0. So at 15, and again, these are example numbers. Most likely that's not going to apply to you. You're going to have an amount there. You know, you're going to have more than a $0 dollar amount. Qualified business income deduction doesn't apply to me either. I'm going to skip over line 13, add lines 12 and 13. Those are my total standard deductions of $14,600. Subtract line 14 from line 11. So my adjusted gross income was the same, $1,765. Remember, I was going to use that example of my W-2 of putting that in there, but I'm not going to right now. I'm just trying to make this simple and quick. As quick as possible. So 14,600 minus 1765. Or I'm sorry, 1765 minus 14,600 is going to give me a negative balance of negative 12,835. But it says if 0 or less, enter 0. So I'm at a negative, so I'm going to put 0. And then my first video goes over how to find the tax table and the instructions. Not the instructions for Schedule C. So we have instructions for Schedule C, and then you also need to find 2024 1040 instructions, and you'll find that in that manual, the tax table, to figure out the taxes that are due based off of your taxable income. Most likely, because my taxable income in this example is 0, I'm going to owe 0 in taxes. But I also have that $249 self-employment tax, and I'm going to have to add that in. So I'm going to owe that. So that total amount is going to be $249 that I owe. And then federal income tax held from your W-2 and your 1099. So let's say I did have a W-2 and I had federal income tax withheld. I can put that there because if I do, and if it's at $249 or more, I'm going to want to put that there so I don't owe taxes for the year. In this example, we're going to say no. I didn't pay any taxes. Add lines 27, 28, 29, and 31. Total other payments, refundable credits, 0. Add lines 25D, 26. These are total payments, 0. I didn't make any payments to the IRS from my 1099. If line 33 is more than line 24, subtract 24 from line 33. This is the amount I overpaid. I did not overpay. I didn't pay any taxes. And I also didn't pay self-employment tax. So I owe that $249. So that's not going to apply to me. The amount you owe, line 37, subtract line 33 from line 24. So 33, which is 0, from 24, $249, is still $249. So I'm going to put that there. That's the amount I owe. That's all I owe. So going back to my Schedule C, where I put in my total income from my 1099 forms that I received of $6,875, if I did not go through this process of figuring out my expenses allowable to deduct from my income, $6,875, going back to 1040, would be part of my taxable income here of $6,875 instead of 0. Plus a self-employment tax if I went through processing that. But let's say I didn't because I'm not going to go through the paperwork because I can't make the time to do that for whatever reason, which is understandable. I've been in that situation, but now you have to make the time. Things are really, really expensive. You got to make the time now. So this isn't cute to do anymore. All right. So let's do this. It's not that hard. You're making it more complicated by getting scared and fearful of the process and the wording. And it's not. Just go through this video, watch it as many times as you need to so that you're educated. And you got to be educated going forward in order to protect yourself and save yourself some money, because you need it. You need the money. All right. So if I had put $6,875 because I didn't want to file all those additional forms here on the taxable income line instead of 0, let's just do that right now for an example so I can show you the difference. And let's say I didn't do this because I'm not doing the form, I'm not deducting my income from the expenses allowed, and I'm not going to do the self-employment forms. I'm just going to be lazy, and I'm going to put $6,875 was my taxable income, and I'm putting that with my W-2. Now I'm looking at the tax table on the federal form, and the tax table is going to show me, let me pull it up here on my phone real quick. Hold on, let me pull it up. Let me pull it up so you can see. All right, so we're going to go through the tax table for 2024, and we're saying I didn't fill out those forms. I'm keeping with my gross income. $6,875 was received from my 1099. Now, what kind of tax would I owe in that situation? $6,850 to the $6,900 is $688. Hopefully you saw that. $688 would be my tax owed instead of the self-employment tax of $249. It may not seem like a lot, but that is a lot. That's $688 minus $275. What is that? What's the difference? $688 minus $275, $413 more that I would owe versus just quickly going through those forms. $413. How long does this video take? Maybe an hour, hour and a half? $413 you just saved in an hour and a half. Can you make that much money doing your No, you can't. In an hour and a half, $413? That'd be nice, but no. This does not take time. This does not take effort. No, it's not. $413 is nothing. I can do, that's fine. Like, I just don't even want to do the paperwork. No, that's not fine. That's a lot of money you're giving away for free to the government when things are really expensive as is. You already worked your ass off this last year. Don't just throw $413 out the window. Don't use a TurboTax and spend $150 to get your payment immediately and throwing it out the window. You need that money. Little stuff like that adds up throughout the year. P.S. Convenience fees add up. The more you do it, the more you pay, and the worse situation that you're in the long run. I know this because that's how I've been operating too, and I'm done. I'm sick of it. And hopefully you're sick of it too. So, yes, I'm going to fill out these forms. I'm going to quickly do them, and I'm going to send all of the paperwork via mail with stamps to the IRS so they can do all the paperwork themselves. They can look at the papers. I'm not doing it online and making it more convenient for anybody. That's bitter, but also I don't trust to do all that stuff online either. So that's why I do it the paper way now that I do. But yeah, so that's an example of what would be the consequence if you didn't do those forms. So let's get back to 1040, and we've got our taxes. We're at $0 for a taxable income. We did our paperwork. We've got tax owed from that tax table. Let me pull that up again. It's going to verify looking at the tax table at 0 income, but less than $5 single, my tax is $0. Let me go back to the 1040 form. $0 is my tax. I'm going to put in my other taxes, including self-employment tax on line 23. which was $249. Yes, I'd rather pay $249 than $688 for filing my taxes this way. Otherwise, I'm paying $688 versus $249. You can go and pay a tax accountant $150, and they're going to tell you the same goddamn thing. All right? I hope that I'm saving you money. I hope that I'm helping. And I hope that you can do this on your own and going forward. And I hope that you become more educated on tax laws and reading those instructions and seeing what can apply to you. So I know I owe $249, line 37. That's all I owe. I'm going to write a check for $249 included in my taxes here for my 1040. I'm going to attach my Schedule 2. I'm going to attach my Schedule 1. I'm going to attach my Schedule SE. I'm going to attach my Schedule C. And I'm going to attach a copy of my 1099 received. I'm going to put that all in a yellow envelope that I got from the Dollar Tree that's padded and it's bigger so that everything can fit. And I'm going to make copies of these for when I file my state taxes. I hope to do a California state tax one for your 1099. But, things take time. Time is money. So the more time I spend doing this, the less money I make out on the road and, meeting people and doing actual work. So your donation is very helpful. If you want to see more of these, please donate. I'll leave a link in the comments or in the description of this video. It doesn't matter how much you can afford. I know you can't afford anything, but anything helps me. And if it's going to help you, definitely encourage you to do so. $1 would be great, a dollar would be lovely. But I hope you gained something from this, at least something. And please comment and ask questions, ask away. All right. I hope this helps you in filing your taxes. Taxes are due on the 15th. For California, an automatic 6-month extension was granted. So just verify that and Google search that. But you are given an automatic 6-month extension for filing your taxes. You don't need to file any paperwork for doing that. You can look at the California state tax filing on my YouTube channel. And there's comments in the resource and a resource provided for verifying that. All right. Happy tax filing. Please let me know if you have any questions.